Good morning, Bookshop Fairy Belle fans. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. So I and a little fairy called Belle, we run a little children's bookshop in Northern Ireland in a town called Warren Point. I have received another letter from Belle. I also have received loads of fairy dust yet again, but Belle sent me also this little thing here, this little drawing. It's it's a little rainbow, because she wants to spread hope and joy as well. I don't know if you can see it. It's there. So it says, "Hope, stay safe, kiss, kiss, Belle." There you go. So if you have drawn a little rainbow too, you can post a photo of it in the comment section below. Just to, spread joy and hope across the country. And so let's see what Belle has been up to. Got another beautiful letter. Whoop. Okay. Dear keepers of the magical world of books, this is how I, the bookshop fairy custodian of we bookworms, will address you from now on. You have done a fantastic job in the past month and you are truly worthy of this important title. Oh, I hope that you had a marvelous Easter weekend. Our fairy dust has spread magical reading powers over the course of last week and children across the entire world read eagerly. The fairy bookshop headquarters have recorded that many children read their favourite book up to 10 times this week. How read-tastic. But first comes first. How was your week? Aren't we lucky to have so much sunshine? Well, Belle, today it's not that sunny here in Northern Ireland, but it's been fantastic, I agree. Yesterday I've counted an incredible number of butterflies in our fairy garden. Butterflies are such elegant and sparkly creatures. Sometimes when it's exceptionally sunny and the butterflies in our garden are in an extraordinary good mood, they allow us to sit on their wings when they are flying around. Then they swirl around, up and down, left and right, until we are thrown in a somersault into the spring flowers, and my brother Finn and I bounce up and down like a bouncing ball. It is such fun. But this morning, my little butterfly friend, who has the glorious name of Gloria, bumped into Mr. Honeypot Bumblebee. Sorry. Mr. Honeypot Bumblebee let go of his honeypot and it broke into 1 million pieces. Of course, Mr. Honeypot was so cross with us. He chased us all the way up to the top of a fairy tree. Gloria was rather cheeky and flew in zigzags, which made Mr. Honeypot even more angry. It was glorious fun. It was glorious good fun. Perhaps you don't know this, but bumblebees are incredibly scared of heights, which is why Gloria had decided to fly up, up, up. Flying high up is the best way to get rid of an annoyed bumblebee. Have you ever noticed they always hover close to the ground? It's for a good reason. When we had reached the treetop, Mr. Honeypot stopped his chase. He buzzed an angry bzzz and flew back down into the fairy garden. Of course, Gloria and I felt incredibly bad. Mr. Honeypot is a rather nice bumblebee. So right after the chase, Gloria and I went to Mr. Honeypot's little house under the tulips and we gave him a lovely cherry blossom to say sorry. Cherry blossoms are hard to come by in the bumblebee world because of their fear of heights, of course. Let me tell you, Mr. Honeypot was delighted. What else? Oh yes! Last week I told you about the most beautiful of all beautiful books. I unlocked it by pouring fairy lemonade over it. Well, what happened next is truly unbelievable. The book grew 2 arms and 2 legs. Then it jumped up and ran away. Why does everybody keep running away? Finn asked. I truly don't know, dear brother Finn, I said. The most beautiful book in the world must be also the most fastest book in the world, and it could jump as high as a kangaroo. Finn and I could barely keep up with it. Our wings fluttered and fluttered as quickly as possible. We ended up in the bookshop, and once the most beautiful book had reached the shop window, it stopped jumping away and sat down. I can't believe it. The sunshine made it look more sparkly than the most magic fairy dust in the world. The book stared yearningly into the busy streets. The book continued to talk. I have been locked up in the fairy kingdom's attic for hundreds and hundreds of years. No one ever thought about pouring fairy lemonade over me. Then it looked at its hand and took off a ring. I will give you this ring. It will guide you to the lost book of fairy spells. You must keep it safe. Just then, our friend Rupert, the careless cat, appeared out of nowhere. He yawned and stretched before blinking his eyes at us. The most beautiful and fastest book in the world was shocked by our cat friend. Rupert always makes quite an entrance with his majestic behavior, and it let go of the tiny ring the same way Mr. Honeypot had let go of his honeypot. The ring rolled right in front of Rupert's paw, and, after sniffing it delicately, Rupert, the careless cat, ate it. Delicious meal, he said, and licked his paw. My dear listeners, I must say that I don't think that our friend Rupert did this to annoy the book. No, not at all. I think he confused the ring with a piece of fluff. Yes, you heard rightly. Cats love sniffing and eating fluff. Just then, we noticed a little girl and her mother that stared at us in disbelief. What a strange sight it must have been. 2 fairies, a talking book, and Rupert, the careless cat. After realizing what had happened, the most beautiful and most fastest book in the world cried out in horror, my ring, my precious ring! Suddenly, the entrance door opened and the little girl and her mother entered the shop. I'm sure that you're curious about what happened next, but I will tell you next week. It is so unbelievable, even I can't believe it. I've sent you loads of magical fairy dust. Yes, we did. Especially because I'm sure that the most beautiful and fastest book is watching us now, and it will make it happy if all the children in the world read as many books as possible in the next few days. Oh, and yes, of course, I haven't forgotten to send you another book. Today, you're going to meet famous Jemima Puddle. Speak to you next week. Your Belle. Kiss, kiss. There you go. So, let's spread our magical reading powers. There's loads of fairy dust here again, so I'm ready. Have to hoover later on again. There you go, loads of fairy dust. And let's see. The Tale of Jemima Puddle by Beatrix Potter. And I really like this little adventure as well. And Jemima reminds me a little bit of Little Red Riding Hood. So let's start. The Tale of Jemima Puddle by Beatrix Potter. What a funny sight it is to see a brood of ducklings with a hen. Listen to the story of Jemima Puddle Duck, who was annoyed because the farmer's wife would not let her hatch her own eggs. Her sister-in-law, Mrs. Rebecca Puddle Duck, was perfectly willing to leave the hatching to someone else. I have not the patience to sit on a nest for 28 days. And no more have you, Jemima. You would let them go cold. You know you would. I wish to hatch my own eggs. I will hatch them all by myself, quacked Jemima Puddle Duck. She tried to hide her eggs, but they were always found and carried off. Jemima Puddle Duck became quite desperate. She determined to make a nest right away from the farm. She set off on a fine spring afternoon along the cart road that leads over the hill. She was wearing a shawl and a poke bonnet. When she reached the top of the hill, she saw a wood in the distance. She thought that it looked a safe, quiet spot. Jemima Puddle Duck was not much in the habit of flying. She ran downhill a few yards, flapping her shawl, and then she jumped off into the air. She flew beautifully when she had got a good start. She skimmed along over the treetops until she saw an open place in the middle of the wood, where the trees and brushwood had been cleared. Jemima alighted rather heavily and began to waddle about in search of a convenient dry nesting place. She rather fancied a tree stump amongst some tall foxgloves, but seated upon the stump she was startled to find an elegantly dressed gentleman reading a newspaper. He had black prick ears and sandy-coloured whiskers. "Quack!" said Jemima Puddle Duck, with her head and her bonnet on one side. "Quack!" The gentleman raised his eyes above his newspaper and looked curiously at Jemima. "Madam, have you lost your way?" said he. He had a long bushy tail, which he was sitting upon, as the stump was somewhat damp. Jemima thought him mighty civil and handsome. She explained that she had not lost her way, but she was trying to find a convenient dry nesting place. "Ah, is that so, indeed?" said the gentleman with sandy whiskers, looking curiously at Jemima. He folded up the newspaper and put it in his coat tail pocket. Jemima complained of the superfluous hen. "Indeed, how interesting! I wish I could meet with that fowl. I would teach it to mind its own business, but as to a nest, there is no difficulty. I have a sackful of feathers in my woodshed." "No, my dear madam, you will be in nobody's way. You may sit there as long as you like," said the bushy, long-tailed gentleman. He led the way to a very retired, dismal-looking house amongst the foxgloves. It was built of faggots and turf, and there were two broken pails, one on top of another, by way of a chimney. "This is my summer residence. You would not find my winter house so convenient," said the hospitable gentleman. There was a tumble-down shed at the back of the house, made of old soap boxes. The gentleman opened the door and showed Jemima in. The shed was almost quite full of feathers. It was almost suffocating, but it was comfortable and very soft. Jemima Puddle Duck was rather surprised to find such a vast quantity of feathers. But it was very comfortable, and she made a nest without any trouble at all. When she came out, the sandy-whiskered gentleman was sitting on a log reading the newspaper. At least he had it spread out, but he was looking over the top of it. He was so polite that he seemed almost sorry to let Jemima go home for the night. He promised to take great care of her nest until she came back again next day. He said he loved eggs and ducklings. He should be proud to see a fine nestful in his woodshed. Jemima Puddle Duck came every afternoon. She laid 9 eggs in the nest. They were greeny white and very large. The foxy gentleman admired them immensely. He used to turn them over and count them when Jemima was not there. At last, Jemima told him that she intended to begin to sit next day. "And I will bring a bag of corn with me so that I need never leave my nest until the eggs are hatched. They might catch cold," said the conscientious Jemima. Madam, I beg you not to trouble yourself with a bag. I will provide oats. But before you commence your tedious sitting, I intend to give you a treat. Let us have a dinner party all to ourselves. May I ask you to bring up some herbs from the farm garden to make a savoury omelette? Sage and thyme and mint and 2 onions and some parsley. I will provide lard for the omelette, said the hospitable gentleman with sandy whiskers. Oh, Jemima Puddle Duck was a simpleton. Not even the mention of sage and onions made her suspicious. She went round the farm garden, nibbling off snippets of all the different sorts of herbs that are used for stuffing roast duck. And she waddled into the kitchen and got 2 onions out of a basket. The collie dog, Cap, met her coming out. What are you doing with those onions? Where do you go every afternoon by yourself, Jemima Puddle Duck? Jemima was rather in awe of the collie. She told him the whole story. The collie listened, with his wise head on one side. He grinned when she described the polite gentleman with sandy whiskers. He asked several questions about the wood and about the exact position of the house and shed. Then he went out and trotted down the village. He went to look for 2 foxhound puppies who were out at walk with the butcher. Jemima Puddle Duck went up the cart road for the last time on a sunny afternoon. She was rather burdened with bunches of herbs and 2 onions in a bag. She flew over the woods and alighted opposite the house of the bushy, long-tailed gentleman. He was sitting on a log. He sniffed the air and kept glancing uneasily round the wood. When Jemima alighted, he quite jumped. Come into the house as soon as you have looked at your eggs. Give me the herbs for the omelette. Be sharp. He was rather propped. Jemima Puddle Duck had never heard him speak like that. She felt surprised and uncomfortable. While she was inside, she heard pattering feet round the back of the shed. Someone with a black nose sniffed at the bottom of the door and then locked it. Jemima became much alarmed. A moment afterwards, there were most awful noises, barking, baying, growls and howls, squealing and groans, and nothing more was ever seen of that foxy whiskered gentleman. Presently, Cap opened the door of the shed and let out Jemima Puddle Duck. Unfortunately, the puppies rushed in and gobbled up all the eggs before he could stop them. He had a bite on his ear, and both the puppies were limping. Jemima Puddle Duck was escorted home in tears on account of those eggs. She laid some more in June, and she was permitted to keep them herself, but only 4 of them hatched. Jemima Puddle Duck said that it was because of her nerves, but she'd always been a bad sitter. I really quite like this one. So that was the Tale of Jemima Puddle Duck. Thank you very much. Belle says thank you as well, and I hope to see you next week again at 11:30 here on this page. So thank you very much, and bye.